Wall Street corrects on Friday. Benchmark indices closed with weekly losses as a hotter than expected February inflation report raises expectations of the Fed keeping rates higher for longer. All eyes now on the two-day Fed meet that starts tomorrow. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific trade mixed ahead of the release of Chinese retail sales and industrial data. The Japanese Nikkei trades with strong gains ahead of the Bank of Japan's policy decision tomorrow. Back home, the Nifty sees its worst week since October 2023, while the broader market sees the worst weekly loss since December 2022. The GIFT Nifty is indicating another lower start for the Indian market today. Crude prices surged last week, rising over 3%, with Brent crude hitting $85 a barrel. Gold posts losses for the week, while Bitcoin slips from record highs. The Election Commission announces dates for the Lok Sabha elections. Polls will be held in 7 phases starting the 19th of April, with nearly 970 million people eligible to cast their vote. 4 state elections will also be held simultaneously. Good morning in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Sonal Bhutra. You're watching Power Breakfast. Those are the top headlines on this Monday morning. It's going to be a very busy week. But first up, let's tell you what's happening in the global markets and specifically in the Asian markets. It's quite a mixed picture right now that we're seeing in the Asian markets. We have the Taiwanese index, which is seeing gains of around 85 points. But we have Hang Seng, which is sitting with cuts of around 52 points. Nikkei is the one which is a big gainer today. Remember, it did see a lot of losses last trading week. But today, ahead of the Bank of Japan rate decision, those particular markets are doing well. So Nikkei is up around 2%. But if we look at the GIFT Nifty, because that is an indication of how our markets will be, the implied open is suggesting a downtick of 67 points. So it could be a day where we could continue to see losses. We'll have to see which way things go. But right now, GIFT Nifty is implying an open at that 22,066 mark. Let's stay with the Asian markets. As I indicated, Bank of Japan's decision on interest rates is due tomorrow, with some analysts expecting Japan's first rate hike since 2007 to take place in April. Goldman Sachs, however, expects the central bank to raise interest rates tomorrow. Let's listen in to Andrew Tilton of Goldman Sachs on his view on the same.
Well, most forecasters are anticipating that the BOJ will go in March or April. Over the last few days, I think that there's been a shift towards March, given the very strong wage negotiation, the early Shunto results, as well as multiple articles over the last few days in media implying that the BOJ will move. So those things, I think, have increased the probability on March. But there's still an expectation that the rise in rates over the coming year or two will be slow. I think Governor Ueda had indicated that in past comments. And so regardless of whether we get a move in March or it's a bit later, the expectation is that policy rates are going to remain quite low for some time to come.
Okay, from Asia to the United States now. Wall Street ended Friday's trading session lower, with the Dow Jones sliding 190 points, snapping a 3-day winning streak. The S&P shed 33 points, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite closed with losses of around 155 points. U.S. equities were under pressure after a hotter-than-expected inflation print led Treasury yields higher. Investors will track the Fed decision later this week now. And as I said, all eyes are now on the U.S. Fed after the hotter-than-expected February inflation report. The Fed meet is set to kick off tomorrow, and the policy decision will be announced on Wednesday night. CNBC's Steve Leisman gets us a preview of what to expect.
Fed official in the December forecast expected GDP at 1.4%, but the economy is running faster than that in the first quarter. Core PCE down to 2.4%, but Wall Street thinks the February number will come in higher at 2.8%, and the Fed funds at 4.6%, or 25 basis point cuts. The median 2024 projection in the middle at 4.6 for 3 cuts, but if just 2 of the 19 officials decide the Fed should cut only twice, well, the median moves to 2 cuts. For the Fed, it comes down to a question of how to think about the past 2 months of inflation. Are they a sign of stalling in the progress or just noise? Is the progress expected for this year going to be delayed into next? Joe Busuelas of RSM says, there are risks to the outlook. With the economy continuing to outperform and consumers still resilient, the Fed might be far more patient on rate cuts than either its forecast implies or the market has priced in. Futures markets began the year looking for 160 basis points of cuts, which would bring the rate down to 3.8%. A lot of that's gone now. The contract trades at 456 with just 80 basis points of cuts built in, or right about where the Fed is now. So the question is whether the Fed moves that forecast, and markets have to price in the risk about both when the Fed begins cuts and also by how much. Steve Leisman, CNBC Business News.
Okay, for Fed policy decision on Wednesday, we'll be watching out for that. But let's also listen into what the Fed could do in the upcoming meeting from experts. Listen into that.
I agree that I think the so-called neutral rate that the Fed talks about is higher than what the Fed has been talking about. I think a real rate is probably closer to 2, given the amount of debt, given the strength in the economy. And then if you add 2% inflation target, 4% is a number. Rates right now are 5.5. That's modestly restrictive. And given the fact that the economy in 2023 was stronger than expected, and we're starting off pretty well this year, I'd say that the neutral rate is higher, as some people are arguing right now, higher than the Fed's recent forecasts.
Okay, all right. With that, we'll slip into a break. When we return, we'll tell you how all these global market cues will affect our own markets on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast, and this is our Power Prep segment. Our research team is joining in to tell you what the trade setup is looking like, the stocks that will be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Hey guys, a very good morning to all of you. Hormaz, let me come across to you. What is the market setup looking like today?
The market is looking for a lot of comfort as of now, considering the kind of week that we had in the last week, and Nifty as well. Now it just managed to hold on to the 22,000 mark. It was the worst week since October of 2023 for the Nifty last week. And if you look at the lows that the Nifty has made, the 21,900 level becomes the key level to watch for the Nifty in today's trading session. Over the last 3 days, the Nifty has fallen towards that 21,900 mark, but has managed to defend that level. So that remains the key, because the technical analysts that we spoke to said that if that level goes, if that level is taken down, then the downsides towards 21,500 open up on the index. For the Nifty Bank as well, in all the mid-cap, small-cap mayhem, the Nifty Bank was pushed to the side a little last week, but even that is slowly grinding lower. It's down for the 6th straight day on Friday as well. We'll keep an eye out on the Nifty Bank as well. It's slightly oversold the setup as well, so we keep an eye out on that. It's recovering from the day's low, but is slowly grinding lower. Now the broader markets as well, those are the ones that will continue to remain in focus. Both the mid-cap and small-cap index had their worst week since December of 2022. The mid-cap index was down almost 5%, the small-cap index 5.5%, but the PSU index as well 9% lower last week, the worst week since COVID of March 2020. But the PSU stocks will remain in focus. Multiple stocks, railways, defense, all of them will remain in focus because of multiple order wins. So we'll keep an eye out on PSUs as well. But the global central banks will take spotlight this week, and those are the cues that the market will be looking forward to. Tomorrow we'll have the Bank of Japan. On Wednesday, US time, we'll have the Federal Reserve coming out with its interest rate decision. So that will be the key one to watch out for. And on Thursday, we'll have the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve as well. There has been a lot of flip-flop over when will the rates be cut. Jerome Powell, in his testimony to the Congress, had also mentioned that they are getting close to the confidence that they need to start cutting rates, but the higher than expected inflation print has soured sentiment on Wall Street, and as a result, the GIFT Nifty is also indicating a gap down start for our own markets. Back to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Hormaz, for that. But a long list of stocks. So Vamakshi will join us to tell us which stock she's watching out for. Hey, Vamakshi.
Well, good morning, Sonal. Let me first start off with RIL and ONGC. Both of these counters will be in focus after windfall tax on crude petroleum has been hiked to 4,900 rupees per ton from 4,600 earlier. However, windfall tax on diesel, petrol and ATF remains at nil. So on the back of that, keep an eye out on RIL and ONGC. Coforge also on our radar. The board has approved raising funds of almost 3,200 crores via QIP. LIC, the government has approved 17% hike in wages of LIC employees. HAL has received an order worth almost 2,890 crores from Defence Ministry for midlife upgrade of nearly 25 Dornier aircraft of Indian Navy. IRCON has received an LOA for construction project worth almost 630 crores. RVNL has received an LOA for project worth almost 340 crores. This is from the Maharashtra Maharashtra Metro Rail Corporation, while RailTel has bagged 2 orders, one worth almost 130 crores in Bihar, while the other one is worth 352 crores from BMC for supply, operations and maintenance of their health department. KSB also on our radar. They have received LOA under PM Kusum 3 scheme of nearly 63 crores for 2,500 solar water pumping systems from Maharashtra Energy Development Agency. Watch out for Lupin as well. The US FDA has issued Form 483 with one observation for its Aurangabad facility, and in fact the company says that it is quite confident of addressing the concern raised by the US FDA and will be resolving it at the earliest. Dr. Lal Patlap has appointed Shankha Banerjee as the CEO and KMP with effect from May 21st, 2024, while Salasal Tech has been declared as a successful bidder in the acquisition of EMC Limited. They have received the letter of intent from the liquidator as well. JSW Energy, the arm, has received LOA for an additional 500 megawatts of wind capacity from SECI. And lastly, let's also focus in on Torrent Power, and that is because the company has received an LOA for setting up nearly 300 megawatt wind solar hybrid projects.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Vamakshi. Let's talk about the F&O space as well. Mangalam is joining us now. Hey, Mangalam.
Good morning. So, over the last few trading sessions, the Nifty has been grinding lower, but the important part is that it is managing in a range. What is that range? It's between 50-day moving average on the lower end. If you look at, Friday's low, 21,932, corresponds with the 50-day moving average, absolutely, with 21,910. But on the way up, it's the 20-day moving average, which is proving to be a bit of a resistance. So if you just take a look at the day's high on Friday, 22,121. We did see a dramatic recovery from the 50-day moving average, but there was an equally dramatic resistance at the 20-day moving average at 22,117. Importantly, even the Nifty Bank is following that very pattern. The 50-day moving average on the Nifty Bank, 46,520. The day's low was 46,310 on Friday. On the way up, 47,000, which is the 20-day moving average for the Nifty Bank, will continue to be a bit of resistance. So with the indices and their ranges out of way, let's talk about the broader markets. That's where a lot of pain is. In fact, we did see a fair amount of weakness, and even as the indices are in a range, the FIs are consistently selling in index futures. Over the last week itself, from 43% longs, the positioning has come down to 38%, and net short contracts have increased from 30,000 to 57,000, very close to series high of close to 64,000 itself. So that's something we have to monitor. Why is that? Because like I said, broader markets are showing a lot of pain. On Friday as well, we did see a fair amount of stocks advancing and a lot of stocks declining. There was some volatility too. In terms of stocks, which we'll be watching out for, a lot of short positions added on PSUs, oil marketing companies, HPCL, and then you have BEL, some of these power financiers, PFC, REC, both of them lower as well. And then we had a couple of stocks which entered the F&O ban, the likes of Biocon and Hindustan Copper. So those are a bunch of stocks that we'll be watching out for. Short point, the frontline indices in a range, the broader markets continue to be under pressure.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us and prepping us up for this trading day ahead. Let's slip into a break. Up next, we'll get you all the cues from the commodities market, so stay tuned for that. Welcome back. While the Election Commission has released the schedule for the upcoming parliamentary elections, the Lok Sabha polls will take place in 7 phases starting from April 19th to June 1st. Results will be announced on June 4th. Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar also stated that by-elections for 4 states, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim, will happen simultaneously with the Lok Sabha elections. Approximately 970 million Indians are eligible to cast their vote at over 10.5 lakh polling stations. Close to 1.5 crore polling officials and security staff are to be deployed for the upcoming parliamentary elections. Okay, with that, let's move on, because now we have to talk about commodities. A lot of action in that space as well. Manisha Gupta is joining us with all the update. Hey, Manisha, good morning.
Morning, Sonal. Thank you for that. Well, I'll start with the crude oil prices, because last week we saw 3.5% of gains coming in. We were trading at a 4-month highs, but there is slight decline in the crude oil prices as we start this week. One, because the dollar index is now trading at a 1-week highs. It also is about the U.S. Fed meeting in this week, 19th and 20th. All eyes would be on that. But even before that, you have the Bank of Japan monetary policy meeting that's happening on Tuesday, and then you also have UK, Australia, Turkey, Switzerland, all of them also holding their monetary policy meetings. There also is inflation data from UK, Canada, and Japan on radar, and the markets will watch out for Chinese industrial production, retail sales. So there's a whole host of monetary policy meetings and data due for this week, and that will keep markets quite choppy. I also want to speak about the gold prices, which is off its highs ahead of the US Fed meeting. We've seen first weekly decline in 1 month, also because the dollar index is trading on the higher side. But the street is also looking at hotter than estimate US inflation data, whether it's for CPI or PPI numbers. So the markets will keep an eye on that. And also the bets of June rate cut have now declined to 58% from 74% earlier. So all eyes clearly on the monetary policy for this week.
Oh, yes, absolutely. For the commodity, for the equity markets as well. That's the big event to watch out for. Thank you, Manisha, for joining us as always. Let's now get you some important updates from around the globe now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that he would continue with the military campaign against Hamas in Gaza and told a cabinet meeting that Israel would push into Rafah despite international pressure to avoid civilian casualties. This comes after Hamas presented a new ceasefire proposal last week, including an exchange of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. Reports suggest that the head of Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad, is likely to join truce talks in Qatar, along with mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. And in other international news, Russia's President Vladimir Putin wins another term of presidency in a landslide victory. This marks a record 6th term after sweeping the polls, which had no serious contender. According to early poll results, the president bagged 88% of the votes. This also makes Putin the longest-serving leader, surpassing Joseph Stalin. And the Royal Challengers Bangalore franchisee breaks its 16-year trophy drought as the women's team won the Women's Premier League final against the Delhi Capitals. The Delhi Capitals opted to bat first after winning the toss and were bowled out for 113 runs after a promising start. RCB then proceeded to chase down the total with 3 balls to spare, breaking the franchisee's 16-year wait for a trophy. Okay, all right. With that, let's quickly take a look at the Asian markets. It continues to be a mixed picture, and GIFT Nifty, that is the one which is indicating that the start for our own markets, that could be in the red. So important trading day. We'll keep getting you more updates. But for now, we'll take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast. Stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.